All right, is it working? It's working, awesome. Can I get a clicker? Thank you. Can I be explained how to use it? Everyone knows here. Everyone's like, amazing. Okay. We're here today with Nadya Tolokonnikova, co-founder of Pussy Riot. Nadya is a conceptual artist, performer, and an activist. Just in case if someone is maybe not fully familiar with Nadya's art and life, we just prepared a little bit of visuals coming. But Nadya, in 2012, you were sentenced for 2 years in Russian prison for actually doing this performance and singing a song. You were only 22 years old at that moment. You went in jail and served a sentence with other members of Pussy Riot and Activist Art Collective. And after you were released, Pussy Riot became a synonymous with resistance in the world and in the world pop culture. You were offered by Madonna to buy the screen rights for Pussy Riot. You had a cameo in the TV series House of Cards. You had such collaborators as Marina Abramovich and Jenny Haltzer. Coming back to your 22 years old self, how did you envision your future at that moment?
I wanted to become a philosophy professor. I was studying philosophy at Moscow State University. My idea for myself was to get a degree and be a doctor of philosophy at some point, which I thought would be very cool, together with the crazier stuff that I do as my performance art practice, because I feel like when you do a few things that are pretty marginal, which is being a woman and also making performance practice, it helps to have a degree. So my idea was to be a mother, be an artist, and to be a philosopher.
Do you feel this has been accomplished?
Partly, it's a work in progress, especially with motherhood. It never stops, which is good. I just think there's always a chance to be better at what you do. In regards with philosophy, I've been resenting classic philosophy for being just very boring, and it was created by a bunch of mostly white guys, and I felt just intrinsically excluded from it. So that's why I always would want to bring some sort of other fresh wave into philosophy through performance practice. And yeah, it feels like the trajectory of my life generally makes sense. And I never wanted to be outside of Russia. And I am today with you, and I'm happy to be with you, but it hurts me badly that I had to leave my home country. So I would say that's just the biggest gap between what I wanted and what I have.
Speaking of which, one of your friends and close collaborators, Alexei Navalny, he was killed in Russian prison about a month ago on February 16th. And Russian prison is notorious for how brutal it is towards political prisoners. Can you tell us about maybe, what we were feeling? How was your day-to-day in Russian prison? And did you ever fear for your life at that moment?
A lot of things have changed since 2012, when I served my time. Today, Russia is not just an autocracy, it's a military dictatorship. And I think things that worked out for me back in the day do not work anymore. I went on hunger strike, wrote an open letter against prison conditions, and I actually was able to achieve some changes. A guy who was the prison warden in my penal colony ended up in a courtroom himself, and he was charged with mismanaging and organizing a slave labor system in my penal colony, and he was banned from ever running a penal colony again, which is, you know, in a grand scheme of things, is a small thing, but it's a big personal victory. Today, we cannot dream of anyone who was involved in a murder of Alexei Navalny actually getting sentenced. They're covered by the system because Putin is a monster that does not hide his monstrosity anymore. I look at him as a person who realized that in the long-term vision, in terms of longer history, he's doomed, he's damned, and he will fail eventually, but because he does realize that he just throws his bloody intestines on everyone and everything and poisons them with his bloody intestines. And I really hope that this time in history when Putin will not longer be in power will come sooner than later, because it hurts people on a daily basis. Coming back to your question about conditions in Russian jail, I'll be short. The main issues are medical help. A lot of people, especially in female prison penal colonies, end up there because of drug use, and some of them end up having HIV. They don't have access to therapy that can make them live long and happy life. The second problem is conditions, prison conditions, living conditions. The system has not changed since the Gulag times, and the attitude towards a prisoner, which the system serves mostly for not even simply punishing you physically, but breaking your spirit. And it definitely does not serve to rehabilitate you, to try to educate you, to make a better person, to give you skills that actually can make you come back to society as a better version of yourself. That doesn't work. And the third big issue is lack of transparency, because the system in Russia is so corrupted. You cannot expect a prosecutor to come to prison and actually find out what's wrong and fix it.
Do you fear for your life now?
I do not, but that might be just my personal, I don't know, it almost feels like a distortion in my mind. Yeah, I prefer not to think about it. A few hours ago, I was talking to Leonid Volkov about some projects that we worked together. He is a high-level member of Navalny team. He got attacked in Vilnius, Europe, where he lives, with a hammer. His eye got pepper sprayed, and he's alive, which is very positive news. But he was hospitalized, and it's a signal from Putin, because Putin works. He's a thug. He's a mafia guy, so he works with this system of signals. He does not tell you personally. I mean, like, he does not tell you, or even like publicly, what's going to happen with you. But he works through this system of threats. And by doing this with Leonid Volkov, he wants to send a signal to everyone else that you're not safe anywhere. If you think that only Alexei Navalny was in danger because he's directly in Russian jail, no. Even if you're in Europe, wherever you are, just like with Stalin, it really brings up memories of Trotsky, who got murdered by Stalin's order in Mexico with an I speak.
In your artwork and also in your personal style, you refer a lot to Christian Orthodox church symbols. Are you religious?
I'm not, but I love those symbols, as you can see. I adore it as a part of our culture, and generally, I really like everything that makes people think about something higher than their physical and biological self. I'm a big believer in the future of humanity and in having ideals and values and goals that are bigger than just your biological survival. And I think it is some sort of faith. It doesn't have to be organized religion. I'm not a big fan just because historically people like me, marginalized people, for whatever reason, they haven't been served well by organized religions. But I do believe in finding something that's higher than you and serving it. In my particular case, it's an idea of freedom, kindness, and love. And second, I really love the aesthetics of Orthodox religion. It's just very pretty. And I don't want it to be taken away from me by a bunch of dudes with long beards who suck Putin's dick. I want to take it back, and that's what I do in my art.
Speaking of Putin, by the way, this is the artwork that put Nadya on Russia's most wanted list. So I think it's important that we kind of know and see it. Your artistic practice is deeply rooted in the physicality. You work a lot with your body, with the space, with physical objects, and through kind of last few years, we've been seeing the renaissance of the digital art, specifically in the blockchain community. How do you think that the technological acceleration is going to affect your future practice?
If you look back at one successful revolution that is pretty close to both of us, revolution of 1917, and I'm not a fan by no means, but it was successful. First thing they did, they captured telegraph and post offices, and for that time it was the most advanced tool for disseminating information. And I love to quote our god Vitalik Buterin here, that if you want to be effective, you have to, if you want to be effective, you have to work with big amount of people, with big communities of people, and in the 21st century, it means digital tools, mastering digital tools. So I'm not a technical mind by no means. I'm an artist, and I rely mostly on my intuition. And my intuition tells me that I need to learn about digital tools. So in 2011, when we started Pussy Riot, we've been exploring YouTube, and we did not have access to any of normal art platforms like gallery, museums. They would never work with Pussy Riot, but we had access to millions of people who could see our arts on YouTube. And YouTube back in the day was so different. It was so cute, very nostalgic. And then I heard of crypto, and at first I was very dismissive because it sounded to me like money, and I don't like to deal with money. I'm very naive and childish, and just I guess as a lot of artists, I don't want to deal with money. But when the NFTs appeared, I got very interested, and I started to learn how can you make something that will enhance the dissemination of my visual practice, but also bring funds towards cases that I care about. And it was very rewarding and successful. At first, I sold an artwork that was called Panic Attack, with which I was able to fund a shelter for victims of domestic violence in Dagestan. It's a region close to Chechnya. It's a place where, well, predominantly people believe there still that women are and gay people are their property, and they are to be punished for misbehaving. So we basically help them to get the fuck out of there and run to Europe. Then we started Unicorn DAO, which is a crypto fund that buys artwork made by women, non-binary people, and queer people. And then one of my favorite things that we've done was raising money for Ukraine. I feel like that was the most telling story, how crypto can help you to break the barriers that created by institutions that are just not, I guess, malleable enough to really help people right here and right now because of something very tragic and very sudden. The war happened, and lots of people wanted to help, and platforms like Indiegogo and Patreon would ban fundraisers connected to Ukraine because they were afraid, what if some of this money would go to funding guns, and then we would get bonked by the American government. And we raised $7 million in a couple of days, and we're able to distribute this money really quickly.
Speaking of which, I just want to kind of provide a little bit more context for folks. So, as we all know, on February 24th, 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. And within about 48 hours, you were able to raise more than $7 million that were sent directly to the crypto wallet owned by Ukrainian government, if I'm correct. And obviously, like the big part of it, that the fact that Ukraine was kind of progressive enough and like blockchain friendly, that they made this step, that they had this wallet and set it up very quickly. I wonder, just kind of thinking about projection in the future, where do you think blockchain can support and help activist practice, or where do you think it can actually be useless or maybe not delivering to the promise?
The primary way I send money to my family or activist causes in Russia is blockchain, because Russia is sanctioned, and there is no difference between people who still try to make difference in Russia and people who vote for Putin, because there is no way banks can make this distinction. So blockchain allows you to avoid governments and restrictions made by corporations and just make your own decisions based on your own ethics. But then there's a problem, because your own ethics has to be strong enough, because those regulations were put there for a reason, and some of these reasons might be valid. So it's, it's a double-edged sword, and I feel like with any kind of freedom, you get much more responsibility, and there you go. You just have to learn how to be a full responsible adult, making your own decisions and actually thinking out. Thinking a lot about ethics, not expecting then a big guy from a cloud comes and will make this decision for you. Years have passed since I came to the crypto space for the first time, And I see that the same dynamic that works in the rest of the world applies here, because it's still the same people who are making decisions. So I don't really think, I think it's a little bit utopian and even naive to think that just by applying this means itself you're going to achieve some wonderful new world. I think it's the same people, but intrinsically, because people here are interested in new stuff, a lot of them are also interested in building a better and fairer world. And I know that a lot of people love dreamers like Vitalik Buterin, who talks about redistribution of public goods, building better governance systems. And so that's what I like about community. I think we have a playground here, and we can show the bigger world that it can work, but we cannot simply rely on tools. We still need a human factor.
Very much agree with this. In the last few years, we kind of collectively been observing the surge in the activism interest and kind of political stance interest amongst the global youth. Like, younger generations have been really more, vocal and not shying away about, where they're standing. How do you feel about the future of activism, and how do you feel about the future generations and where they're standing politically?
Everywhere. Where, in Russia or everywhere?
Just globally.
So it's an interesting question. Well, I mean, honestly, I don't have an answer. What do you think?
Do you feel hopeful? Do you feel more hopeful?
Yes and no. I mean, they have tons of bullshit in their heads. I'm an old lady, and I don't agree with everything they say. I love my daughter. I think she's a bright young activist, and so I feel hopeful about her, but not necessarily about about every single young activist.
You actually do a lot of also work on the reproductive rights, and you have a daughter. Can you talk more about why do you think it's important to talk about reproductive rights?
It's mad important, and well, this is a place where we've done an action that's called Matriarchy Now in Austin, Texas state capital. That was really cool. So every time when we come back to Texas, we're reminiscent of that action. And actually, for the first time when we came to Austin, Texas, we came with my daughter, and it was her birthday, and we were doing some activist stuff. We were walking around Texas State Capitol building and imagining stuff that we can do. So a few months later, we came back with a group of feminists and did an action, Matriarchy Now, with a giant flag, don't know, like 10 meters tall, probably more. You can find photos and videos on the internet, which kicked off our campaign for reproductive rights that we launched, surprise, on a blockchain that was called legalabortion.eth. We sold the photo of this protest action first, and then we started to raise money through this address, legalabortion.eth. I believe we were able to raise around $500,000. It was very difficult to push for this issue in the crypto community, and I think it was one of these times when I actually realized that I need to take a step back just for my mental health, and I started to show up much less in the crypto community because it's still mostly guys, and I don't think it's intrinsically bad to be a guy, but it's just most likely, except the cases of trans people, you don't have a womb if you're a guy, and you don't fully understand why it's that important to protect your body from it doing something that you don't want to happen. I've tried to explain that it's a common issue. It's something that touches all of us, regardless of what we have, a dick or a pussy. Because if my pussy didn't have a dick in it, then I wouldn't have to make an abortion. So if all of us were lesbians, then we wouldn't have to make abortions. And then I think the next step, after being a little bit burned by the lack of interest to reproductive rights in the crypto community, the next step we did was to partner with Sotheby's and try to work with this established art institution, but also with crypto community, to raise money through an auction for reproductive rights. And that was interesting. That was really cool when it comes to working with artists. Artists were amazing. We worked with Jenny Holzer and Marina Abramovich. Cindy Sherman donated her work. And on the other side, it was the whole array of artists who we collected as Unicorn DAO that we wanted to elevate and put them together on the same platform with these matriarchs. And so that part was reporting, but working with Sotheby's, I do not necessarily recommend it.
Do you know like how in crypto we call people who are outside of crypto, we call them normies? So I assume that, you know, you're an activist and we're all here normies because we're not like we're not dedicating our life to activism. So what would you suggest and tell people who are, you know, pursuing their careers, maybe like busy with their families, but they have like a cause or two that they care about, but they don't want to make a decision to dedicate their whole life? What would be the best way to help through this cause and actually show some support?
Donating money is obviously a very important step. If we want it or not, we live in a world where we still have professional activists or human rights workers. In my ideal world, everyone is an activist, and then the weight on my shoulders is much less because all of us care, and I don't have to run around from door to door convincing you that it's very important to have reproductive rights, it's very important for people not to be killed because of their political views. I hope that one day we will achieve this world, but for now, there are people like Navalny and his team or Pussy Riot, and if they want it or not, they have become professional activists. So I think donating to organizations like Navalny Foundation Against Corruption or a foundation of your choice, and then spreading word, and it does not have to be a word on the internet. It could be as easy as talking to your relatives, and I know it's very difficult at times, but if all of us would do that will help a little bit. Navalny said at one of his court hearings, he told a judge and prosecutors, he asked them, do not look down. He said, "Не смотрите в стол." Literally, it means do not look at the table, meaning like do not put your eyes down. Look straight. You see a problem, look it in the eyes. Do not shy away from it. As Václav Havel wrote in his famous essay, "The Power of the Powerless," if all of us would say that the emperor is naked, then nobody has to be punished for saying that. And I think voicing that is incredibly important, and it's obvious by now that we cannot make it happen on our own. We are the powerless until we realize that how much power we have as a collective.
Thank you so much, Nadya.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say very big thank you to the Boys Club team, Dina and Natasha, for making sure that voices like Nadya's are heard, because while we do build the new internet, we need to remember what for we're building the new internet. Thank you.